바로 알리기. 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump will hold their first summit in Washington, D.C. on August 25th. Ye's three-day visit will include discussions on the two countries' security alliance and economic partnership. And in light of Vietnam's top political leaders' visit to South Korea this week, South Korea on Tuesday hosted a business forum where Seoul and Hanoi explored ways to further tighten their economic collaboration and sealed over 50 MOUs in the energy, food, and tourism sectors. The song Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters has made it to the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. The milestone makes the Hunters the first fictional act to top the chart since Encanto, and the first female group to do so since Destiny's Child in 2001. The president's office has confirmed the first summit between the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. will take place in around 2 weeks from today. It'll be President Lee Jae-myung's first face-to-face with President Donald Trump since taking office 2 months ago. Our president's office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
The date has been made official for the first E-Trump summit, August 25th. President Lee Jae-myung will be in Washington from August 24th to 26th upon invitation from U.S. President Donald Trump. According to the top office in Seoul, it'll be a working visit involving a luncheon. During the first summit in more than 2 months since Lee took office, the agenda will include key issues.
The two leaders will discuss ways to develop the South Korea-U.S. alliance into a future-oriented, comprehensive strategic alliance in response to the changing international security and economic environment.
An economic partnership on chips, batteries, and shipbuilding will top the agenda, as well as high technology and critical minerals, as part of the Allies' framework trade deal that was reached late last month, before the Trump administration's August 1st deadline. Security issues that were not addressed at that time could be on the table. Eyes are also on whether the two leaders will discuss resuming dialogue with North Korea, reflecting peace efforts by the new government in Seoul.
The leaders will discuss measures to coordinate peace on the Korean Peninsula and denuclearization, while further strengthening the robust South Korea-U.S. combined defense posture.
First Lady Kim Keon will be accompanying the president. Business leaders could also join the trip, though the presidential office says it has yet to be decided. With much speculation that President Lee's trip to neighboring Japan will precede his U.S. trip, his office remains tight-lipped, adding it's sounding out various possibilities. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And attention is now on what specific items will be on the table. For now, security and trade are expected to top the agenda. Our Park Gon-woo has more.
As the Korea-U.S. summit approaches later this month, speculation is mounting over the possible agenda items. One is security, including modernizing the alliance, which could involve changes to the size and role of the U.S. forces Korea, increasing defense spending, and greater strategic flexibility. This comes after remarks last week from USFK Commander Xavier Brunson, who cited evolving security threats, including from the North's nuclear program expansion. Asked about a potential troop reduction, he stressed capability over numbers. Observers are watching how much Seoul can concede, as fully rejecting U.S. requests may be difficult while maintaining stability on the peninsula. The Washington Post also reported that the U.S. initially sought to raise Korea's defense spending from 2.6% to 3.8% of GDP, along with boosting Seoul's annual cost-sharing payments for U.S. troops. Another expected key item is finalizing details of Korea's $350 billion investment pledge made during tariff negotiations. About $150 billion is expected to go toward the Mascot project, possibly through acquiring and operating U.S. shipyards and building and supplying naval and commercial vessels. The rest would possibly be invested more broadly in sectors such as chips and batteries. Specific investment sectors and timelines for implementation are expected to be discussed. Talks may also touch on non-tariff barriers, from the possible allowance of agriculture and beef imports to digital trade issues. With about 2 weeks remaining, the summit is expected to tackle these issues with the hope of concluding the talks with constructive outcomes for both sides. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
As the U.S. and China have agreed to extend their trade truce for another 90 days, Beijing will give relief to American firms listed on a trade and investment control list in April. But global tariff uncertainty is expected to persist due to the Trump administration's tariffs imposition. Cheong Wa Dae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Monday extending the U.S. China tariff truce by 90 days. The move finalizes the outcome of last month's high-level trade talks in Sweden. As a result, U.S. tariffs on China, cut to 30% in May, and China's tariffs on the U.S., lowered to 10%, will remain in place until early November. Analysts say any breakthrough is likely to come only after a face-to-face meeting between President Trump and China's President Xi Jinping, possibly on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in Gyeongju, South Korea, this October. Reviewing the joint statement on U.S. China economic and trade meeting in Geneva on May 12, 2025, the White House said on Monday that regarding articles outlined in quote-unquote the announcement of the Customs Tariff Commission of the State Council No. 4 of 2025, it would suspend 24 percentage points of the 34% rate set then, quote-unquote, for an additional period of 90 days. China announced it would, quote-unquote, adopt or maintain all necessary administrative measures to suspend or remove the non-tariff countermeasures taken against the United States as agreed in the Geneva joint statement. To implement the consensus reached at the China-U.S. high-level economic and trade talks, effective August 12, 2025, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Commerce of China said on Tuesday that it would extend relief to American companies that were placed on a trade and investment control and unreliable entities list in April. The Ministry of Commerce said it would stop those restrictions for some companies while giving others another 90-day extension. However, as the Trump administration has signaled upcoming tariffs on the pharmaceutical and semiconductor sectors later this week, global tariff uncertainty persists. Cheong Arirang News.
Now, over in the U.S., where President Donald Trump said he'll hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week in Alaska. Trump also said that following the talks, he would pursue a trilateral summit with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed on Monday that he would be holding a face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday in Alaska. Trump also raised the possibility of a trilateral summit involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after his one-on-one talks with Putin. However, he said while he would be available if needed, he'd prefer a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky. While leaving open the possibility of a trilateral summit, President Trump stated that he would first hear Putin's thoughts and potentially share the details of the meeting with President Zelensky, the EU, and NATO leaders.
I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders, and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first, and then I'll call them after.
Meanwhile, during a press conference at the White House on Monday, Trump said he'll try to get some territory back for Ukraine during his meeting with Putin on Friday. Trump stressed that Russia has occupied a big portion of Ukraine. The U.S. leader raised the possibility that both Russia and Ukraine would need to make some territorial concessions in order to work out a peace deal, saying that there could be some swapping changes in land. However, Zelensky on Saturday shot down any chance of Ukraine giving up territory captured by Russia in the ongoing war. In a video posted on X, Zelensky said that Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier, adding that his country will not reward Russia for what it has perpetrated. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea is considering skipping its annual report on human rights violations in North Korea. Now, if one is not released, it will be the first time since 2018. A Unification Ministry official said on Tuesday that it's been difficult to obtain new testimonies, as fewer than 10 people defected directly from the North last year. Though difficulty in collecting first-hand testimonies is cited as a reason, the ongoing review appears to be be part of the Lee Jae-myung administration's efforts to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula. During his confirmation hearing last month, Unification Minister Jung Dong-young said that it's not appropriate to use North Korean human rights as a means of criticizing the regime. In part two of our interview, the CSI's Korea chair weighs in on the prospects for a Trump-Kim summit and the issues that could define it. He also notes that Washington's pursuit of denuclearization of North Korea is a long-term goal. Our Kim Jong-sil reports.
Victor Cha, Korea chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says Washington's official stance remains unchanged. The end goal is still the denuclearization of North Korea. But he warns that's no short-term prospect.
Stated U.S. policy is the end game is denuclearization, right? That's our stated U.S. policy. But that's really a long-term goal, I mean, given how much North Korea's nuclear program has developed. So the question then becomes, in the interim, what would the United States be seeking?
In that interim, Dr. Cha says Washington could pursue other priorities and perhaps a diplomatic opening. He suggested that if the U.S. president attends October's APEC meeting in Gyeongju, the trip might also take him to Panmunjom and possibly to talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
If that happened, I just want to ask you the real end game for both sides this time?
Certainly, I think some form of freeze on the program, some of the initial steps towards denuclearization would be important. But at the same time, there are other things that I think the United States is concerned about when it comes to North Korea. And one of them, of course, is their deep military relationship with Russia.
He says that relationship now factors directly into Trump's top foreign policy priority.
This is clearly a priority of the Trump administration to end the war in Europe. And North Korea now plays a role in that. So one wonders whether that will become a high priority issue if President Trump meets the leader of North Korea.
But Pyongyang has set its own terms for any meeting. In a recent statement, Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korea's leader, rejected any challenge to the regime's nuclear weapons status.
She made very clear that any meeting between the two leaders will be as de facto recognized nuclear weapon state. So that is a condition that they've laid out for meeting, and I think it's one that the Trump administration has to determine whether they're willing to meet that condition or not.
Dr. Cha says a Trump-Kim meeting could sideline denuclearization issues for others, such as Pyongyang's military ties with Moscow or stopping North Korea from helping rebuild Iran's nuclear program.
But as we've seen with this president, in the end, he makes the decision. And as far as we know, he won't make that decision until he walks into the room with Kim.
For now, all eyes are on what Trump decides when and if he meets Kim. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea and Vietnam continue to explore ways to further strengthen their ties in light of Vietnam's top political leaders' visit to South Korea this week. And today, Seoul hosted a business forum aimed at further beefing up its economic ties with Hanoi. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young reports.
To mark the first visit in 11 years by Vietnam's top party leader, the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry hosted a business forum on Tuesday, aiming to bolster economic cooperation between the two nations. The forum was attended by Vietnam's Party General Secretary Do Lam, 500 officials from both governments and the business community, and South Korean Prime Minister Kim Min-seok.
Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1992, Korea and Vietnam have mutually become among each other's top 3 trading partners. Korea is also Vietnam's largest investor, with nearly 10,000 companies operating there, making them essential economic partners across diverse sectors like textiles, electronics, chemicals, and shipbuilding.
Prime Minister Kim further emphasized expanding cooperation beyond manufacturing into new industrial sectors such as high-tech, culture, and digital, and also underscored comprehensive supply chain collaboration, particularly in energy. Vietnam's finance minister highlighted mutually beneficial cooperation.
The Vietnamese government welcomes Korean businesses to jointly enter Vietnam and third markets, and we are prepared for mutually beneficial cooperation. We will particularly work closely with Korea in new energy, semiconductors, AI, and the e-digital economy, and we will spare no support for large-scale cooperation projects.
The forum notably spurred significant collaboration, culminating in the signing of 52 memoranda of understanding across diverse sectors, such as industrial cooperation, energy, and food and tourism. Specifically, 47 Korean companies and organizations, along with 37 Vietnamese counterparts, committed to strengthening cooperation in a wide array of fields, from energy, shipbuilding, and aviation to cutting-edge areas like AI, advanced materials, and drones. 문지영, Arirang News.
South Korea's Defense Minister An Kyu-baek and his Vietnamese counterpart Pham Van Giang have agreed to boost ties in defense and industry. The two defense chiefs talked on Tuesday about specific ways to enhance defense cooperation in line with the comprehensive strategic partnership between the two nations. They additionally agreed to transfer a retired South Korean patrol vessel, the Cheong, to Vietnam. This marks the third patrol vessel that Seoul has transferred to Hanoi, following similar moves in 2017 and 2018. And South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and the First Lady Kim Keon Hee invited Vietnam's top political leader To Lam and his spouse Ong Phong Lee to the Sangchunjae reception hall at Cheong Wa Dae on Tuesday. Presidential spokesperson Kang Woo-jung said the couples enjoyed musical performances featuring traditional instruments from each country. Over tea and a walk in the Nokjiwon Garden, the two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to advancing bilateral cooperation. The presidential office says this was the first official event at Sangchunjae under the new administration and called it the highest honor in hosting a state guest. In other news, workplace safety was once again at the center of Tuesday's cabinet meeting, as President Lee Jae-myung discussed ways to end the recent string of fatal industrial accidents with his cabinet. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yujin has this report.
At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Lee Jae-myung again emphasized the need to move away from what he called a, quote, regressive republic of industrial accidents.
피할 수 있는데 피하지 않았다든지, 특히 돈을 벌기 위해서, 비용을 줄이기 위해서, 지출해야 될 비용을 아끼기 위해서 누군가의 목숨을 빼앗는다고 하는 것은, 그건 저는 전에도 말씀드렸습니다만 이게 일종의 미필적 고의의 살인 또는 사회적 타살이다.
The country has seen a string of fatal industrial accidents this year, with the most recent one happening last Friday when a worker fell to his death while dismantling a safety net at an apartment construction site. The next day, President Lee ordered the Labor Ministry to report on the preventive and follow-up measures for industrial accidents at Tuesday's cabinet meeting.
After hearing from the Labor Ministry, the president noted that not a single major construction company has been penalized under the Serious Accidents Punishment Act and called for a penalty surcharge system to ensure companies secure adequate budget for safety measures.
The Land Ministry reported its own plan to address major construction-related accidents. President Lee suggested harsher measures, such as permanently barring unsafe companies from public tenders and offering substantial rewards for whistleblowers who report poor safety management. He also touched on inter-Korean relations, noting the dismantling of loudspeakers by both sides.
대한민국의 조치에 맞춰서 북측도 이 불필요하고 비용 드는 확성기를 상호 철거했으면 좋겠습니다. 이렇게 상호적인 조치를 통해서 남북 간의 대화와 소통이 조금씩 열려가기를 바라고,
Following Seoul's complete removal of its loudspeakers used for anti-North Korea broadcasts, South Korea's military says it has detected signs of the North beginning to dismantle some of its own along the border. 송유진, Arirang News.
A Seoul court held a hearing today on whether to allow the arrest of a former First Lady Kim Keon Hee and the wife of former President Yoon Suk-yeol. Kim faces allegations of stock manipulation, interference in party nominations, and influence peddling, which she denies. Prosecutors argued there was a high risk she would destroy evidence. After the 4-hour hearing at the Seoul Central District Court on Tuesday, Kim was moved to Seoul Southern Detention Center to await the court's decision. A decision could come as early as tonight, and if granted, it will mark the first time in the country's history that a former president and first lady are detained simultaneously. Shifting gears, the K-pop Demon Hunters craze is hitting new heights, with its hit song Golden topping the Billboard Hot 100, making history for both K-pop and virtual idols. Our Pyeongyang tells us more.
The K-pop Demon Hunter sensation shows no signs of slowing down, this time topping the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Praised for its high-quality animation, visually striking characters, and clever use of Korean traditional folklore, the Netflix original animation soundtrack Golden climbed up a spot to reach #1 for the first time. Billboard announced the feat on Monday local time, noting that Golden is the 9th song linked to Korean pop to top the Hot 100, and the first to do so with female lead vocalists.
This is the first time a girl group has topped the Billboard Hot 100 since Destiny's Child. And in K-pop history, it's also the first time virtual idols, or an animated act based on K-pop, have reached #1 on the chart.
Sung by the virtual girl group HUNTR in the movie, the vocalists behind the song are Korean-American artists EJ, Ray Ami, and Audrey Nuna. Of all the tracks in K-pop Demon Hunters, Golden has stood out for its soaring high notes in the latter part of the song, a section that has even become a benchmark for proving one's vocal skills and sparked the Golden Challenge among K-pop stars. Big K-pop names like Solar of Mamamoo, Lily of Mix, and Ailey have all joined in.
K-pop is not just about listening to and enjoying the music. It's about enjoying it together. That's one of K-pop's charms. Participating, singing along, even creating content, all of that has helped bring the songs from K-pop Demon Hunters closer to the public.
Earlier this month, Golden also topped the UK's official singles Top 100 chart, one of the 2 biggest music charts in the world, alongside Billboard's Top 100, making it a rare track to conquer both the UK and U.S. pop markets. Pyeongyang, Arirang News.
Rainfall of around 30 millimeters per hour has poured down on the coastal areas of Jeju Island and Jeollanam-do province. Heavy rain warnings and advisories are in effect on the coast of Jeollanam-do, Gyeongsang-nam-do provinces, and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, and there will be a lot of rain. This rain will spread all over the country tomorrow. As much as 150 millimeters of rain is forecast in northern Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon, and up to 120 millimeters in Seoul. Please be prepared in advance to avoid any damage from rain. The morning will start warm at 25 degrees Celsius in Seoul and Gwangju, Busan at 26 degrees. Highs will go up to 27 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gyeongju and Jeju at 33 degrees. It will start raining tomorrow night in the southern parts of the country, but it will continue until Friday morning in the central parts of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
껍데기는 가라, 알맹이만 오라. 그래서 플라스틱이나 일회용 포장지로 이렇게 둘러싸여 있잖아요. 그 껍데기를 치우고 알맹이만 리필하자는 의미에서 그래서 무포장 제품들을 판매하고 있습니다. 좋은 점은 자기가 원하는 만큼만 살 수 있다는 거예요. 비우고, 헹구고, 분리하고 이런 과정을 거치지 않아도 되는 거죠. 저희 손님들이 자기 용기를 사용해서 새 플라스틱을 줄인 이제 1년 결과를 내보면 거의 10만 개 정도 플라스틱 공병을 10만 개 정도 아끼거든요. 그래서 이런 가게들이 많아지면 새 플라스틱 사용도 줄이고 쓰레기가 될 물건들도 구조해서 재활용시킬 수 있는 거죠. 우리가 플라스틱을 배출한 다음에 얘들이 어떤 루트를 타고 어떻게 재활용이 되거나 버려질까 이걸 직접 눈으로 보고 싶어하는 쓰레기 덕후들이 이제 저희 주변에 많아요. 보시고 난 전후가 다르다. 굉장히 쓰레기를 보는 자세, 쓰레기를 어떻게 줄일지에 대해서 획기적으로 자기 자세가 바뀌게 됐다. 이런 말씀 되게 많이 해주셔서 힘을 내서 매달 하고 있습니다. 사실 낯서니까 힘들어하시는 것 같아요. 낯서니까 더 불편하고 힘들다고 생각하실 텐데 여기 오실 때는 가벼운 마음으로 오시면 됩니다. 저희 손님들이 기증을 해주신 깨끗한 용기를 저희가 한 번 더 소독을 해요. 그 다음에 쫙 무료로 비치하기 때문에 그냥 오시면 되고요. 오셔서 이제 무게를 재는 방법들은 저희가 다 설명을 해드릴 거예요. 나는 알맹이만 담는 그리너입니다.
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million U.S locally developed Yuri rocket.
아리랑 도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Keon Hee. Tensions are rising ahead of the Ulchi Freedom Shield drills starting August 18th. North Korea warns it will defend itself if red lines are crossed, while calling the exercises a real nuclear war simulation. Yet, in a rare gesture, Pyongyang has also taken down on some of its border loudspeakers after South Korea removed theirs. Kim Jong-un's daughter, Kim Joo-hee, is appearing more often at military events, stirring succession's talk. And Washington and Seoul prepare for a key summit. The North Korea is tightening military ties with Russia, pledging thousands more personnel by year's end. So to help us break down into the latest developments and what's driving these moves, we're joined here in the studio by Dr. Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Good to be with you.
Good to be back.
And also joining us from New York is Dr. Mark Barry, Associate Editor Emeritus at the International Journal on World Peace. Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too.
So let's start a discussion with Dr. Go. In a couple of days, the Ulchi Freedom Shield drills will bring in U.S. Marines and UN command troops. So Pyongyang, like I've said, has warned it will exercise sovereign self-defense if red lines are crossed. How would you read into the latest statements?
Well, I think there's clearly a little bit of change within continuity from North Korea. This is a part of a strategic communication on the part of Pyongyang. So I think there's been a change of tone on the part of North Korean regime since Kim Yo-jong issued a statement, a later statement last month, in late July, stating, essentially criticizing South Korean government, again warning Washington and Seoul not to stage joint military exercises. But interestingly enough, Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's sister, stated that he might be interested in resuming dialogue with Washington. And since then, reflecting also the fact that there's a new administration in Seoul, North Korea has been changing its tone, its statements towards not just Seoul, but also to Washington. So this is a typical diplomatic move, not just by North Korea, but many other countries. So essentially it's cabling or telegraphing signals to each interlocutors in Seoul and Washington that it might be open for dialogue, but then they are being very tentative, very careful, because North Korea starts from a baseline where they stated many times that they're not interested in dialogue, so they cannot really engage in this sudden change of heart or change of face, I would say. So they are making these deliberate moves to change not just the expectation on the part of Washington and Seoul, but also to make it seem like they are not risking too much. They're not too eager to engage in dialogue with the United States and South Korea. But I think this is being interpreted very positively. I think the State Department in Washington already issued welcoming remarks in this regard, that they are clearly very interested in resuming dialogue. So I think this is a very positive sign, even though we have to take it very cautiously, that North Korea might be disengaging from its previous stance of being confrontational with Seoul and Washington.
Right. So though it's not a very strong move, still the tone is quite noticeable, the shift in that. Now, staying with these drills, the North's defense minister calls them a real nuclear war simulation that will make the Korean peninsula less safe. Dr. Barry, do you think this is meant to deter the drills, or rally the public, or sway foreign opinion? What do you think was the purpose?
I think this is Kim Jong-un's way of reminding President Trump that, hey, when we last talked, you had more or less canceled all of your exercises, number one. Number two, we had agreed to curtail all the intermediate range and long range missile tests on North Korea's part. And there was a respectful relationship there. And yet, right now, the official U.S. policy is that it looks very similar to Biden's policy, which is that the Trump administration at this point is saying that it wishes to pursue the complete denuclearization of North Korea. So basically, neither side is giving up its cards, but I agree with the way Dr. Gov't characterized it, which is that I think in an organic way, North Korea is trying to slowly glide towards a certain position of being more flexible. And the fact that the U.S. is, in fact, postponing, officially because of weather, some of the exercises in Ulchi Freedom Shield is a tentatively good sign. But I think a lot of things could shake open and break open with the Alaska meeting if it takes place on Friday between Trump and Putin.
Mm-hmm. Now, staying with the latest exercises, some of the field training exercises have been actually postponed to September, though North Korea hasn't really mentioned it yet. Do you think this kind of decision could affect Pyongyang's military stance, Dr. Gov't?
Well, it depends on how North Koreans are going to take this. I mean, if North Koreans are trying to read signs from Washington that they are disposed to dialogue with North Korea, then I think they are definitely going to take this positively. We have to understand that one of the major demands on North Korea to restart the dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang was for the United States and South Korea to suspend joint military drills. So even though scaling down the military drills by separating field training exercises from command post exercises doesn't quite match North Korean demand 100%. North Koreans, if they are again trying to see positive signs in this, then they're going to take this as a welcoming or response on the part of President Trump, that President Trump might really mean what he says about being interested in resuming dialogue with Kim Jong-un. So yes, I think in that sense, I think it leaves enough space for North Korea to take this positively and also incentivize them to take the next step, which is to clarify their position regarding dialogue with the United States. Even though we know there's a huge gap between what North Korea wants from this hypothetical round of negotiation with the United States and what the United States is ready to give. So essentially, everything hinges upon whether the United States will finally grant North Korea what North Korea has been seeking for many decades, which is the status as a nuclear state. That seems to be kind of wanting. So the gap is very big right now between the two positions. But regardless, I think this back and forth going on between Pyongyang and Washington seems to indicate that maybe the North Koreans are finally, as Dr. Barry has indicated, they are willing to be flexible and essentially meet with the American counterparts, not to discuss a serious item on their discussion agenda, but to meet for meeting's sake.
Now, let's move into a rather bigger gesture in a related move after Seoul has removed its anti-North loudspeakers. Pyongyang dismantled some of its 40-plus along the border as well. Dr. Barry, do you think this could be a sign of proportional de-escalation?
I don't read too much into it, but at least President Lee acknowledged it today. And even he said, we don't know exactly how many they've removed. And I think those things they're fungible. They can take them down, they can put them back pretty easily. But it's not a bad sign. I think what President Trump will want to see, and I'm sure President Lee will mention it when they meet at the White House, is there can be incremental changes, but they should be in one direction. There shouldn't be flip-flopping. There shouldn't be zigzagging and so forth. So it's potentially a good sign, but it's just one of many that we have to see along the road over the next few months.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's also touch upon the leadership signals in Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un's daughter, of course, Kim Joo-hee, has apparently made around 39 public appearances since late 2022, including 24 at military events, often beside her father. Dr. Go, do you think this is a clear signal from the North as Kim Joo-hee being the successor of Kim Jong-un?
Well, I wouldn't say clear signal. I think the clear signal will be North Korea declaring that Kim Joo-hee is indeed the legitimate and sole successor to Kim Jong-un, but that hasn't happened yet. But I think it's probably more convincing signal that she's clearly in line for succession. Maybe she's at the head of the line right now to succeed Kim Jong-un if something might happen to him. So clearly those signals are mounting. I think the way she interacts in kind of public events. So these events are important to cover and also to see whether Kim Joo is indeed is lining up to be anointed as the sole successor to Kim Jong-un. He said these are protocol events, so it's very highly theatrical, but at the same time organized. And a lot of these things reflects the power hierarchy within the North Korean regime. And just reading at those signs, how Kim Jong-un interacts with the senior party and military officials, how she essentially shakes hands with, say, visiting foreign dignitaries and ambassadors posted to Pyongyang. These all add information regarding Kim Jong-un's status within the regime, and they all seem to point towards the fact that she's indeed being considered to be a successor to Kim Jong-un. So, for instance, the way the regime address her, even though her name is not being broadcast loudly, she's being described as somebody very dear. And also another very important point here is the positioning, physical positioning in these kind of events, because North Korea, it's a very, I would say, they really delve into symbols, the power symbols, and here the positioning relative to the leader in North Korea, which happens to be her father, matters very much. So the physical distance between Kim Joo-hee and Kim Jong-un also connotes how close the two are. Not only that, but also how close to power she is in that. And it seems that, at least from looking at the photographs that the North Korean regime distributes to the world officially, it shows that the Kim Joo-hee might be the person who's closest to Kim Jong-un, even closer than her own mother, the First Lady of North Korea, Lee Seol-ju. So all these signals seem to show that she's being groomed to be the successor, even though the official confirmation of that it's not unlikely to come anytime soon because she's too young for now. Right. She's only 12, and chances that they'll be waiting many years, I would say, until she turns into officially an adult, probably 18 or 19, which is 7 years from now. So there are a lot of time for an alternative to take place. So it remains to be seen. But for today, right now, there are also signs point towards the fact that she's being groomed up to be a potential successor to Kim Jong-un.
Right, that really does seem to be evident given her footages. Now, let's shift a little bit to the Seoul-Washington summit upcoming on August 25th, Dr. Go. It will be the first of which between President Trump and President Lee Jae-myung, and North Korea will be high on the agenda, people say. How might Trump's interest in talks with with Kim Jong-un reshape inter-Korean diplomacy moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic between the President-elect Lee Jae-myung and President Trump, because right now, on the surface at least, the North Korea policy directions on Seoul and Washington seem to be completely aligned. Clearly, President Trump is different from his predecessor, President Biden, in the sense that he wants to engage Kim Jong-un in a meaningful conversation, and then President Lee Jae-myung clearly wants to support such initiative. So, but the problem here is that North Korea isn't really North Korea. North Korea has expressed very strongly and in no uncertain terms that they are not interested in dialogue, especially one that concerns North Korea's denuclearization. And this is something that something that Washington hasn't really clarified yet. Not a couple of months ago, even the State Department issued that U.S. policy towards North Korea is still about denuclearization. So even though we just discussed how North Korea made a tentative signals that denoting that they might be interested in dialogue with the United States, this is the reason why that prospect is not certain yet. So I think in that sense, I think President Lee has some space to maneuver here, role to fulfill in this case. So clearly President Lee is very invested in resuming inter-Korean relations that has been completely broken down during President Yoon's tenure. So I think he'll try to convince President Trump to be more proactive, to come out with a more detailed message and much more consistent to draw North Korea into the negotiation table again.
Right. Of course, South Korea's position on this specific issue would be very important as well, as we have been concerned about the so-called Korea passing when talks between President Trump and Kim Jong-un restart. Dr. Barry, how real is that risk of South Korea passing, and how can Seoul avoid being actually sidelined?
I don't know how you avoid it. I was in Seoul during the Kim Dae-jung summit with Kim Jong-il, and in perusing the internet, I noticed how Chuck Cartman, who was, I believe, then the U.S. envoy to the North Korea, or envoy to North Korea in terms of negotiations, he was quite disjointed and quite, perturbed. He pretty much said it in so many ways. Why are you leaving the U.S. out? And I was surprised. I had so much respect for Chuck. But this is just, it's embedded in the cake. It's baked in the cake. Same thing in the June 2019 summit at the DMZ. Although President Moon got to shake hands with Kim Jong-un, when they went in the building to have the meeting, it was just Trump and Kim Jong-un. And I just don't know how you avoid it. And I think Trump is taking the same approach with Putin, which is, Zelensky can have his own meeting with Putin later on, but he's going to arrange the deal. So, unfortunately, the U.S. thinks its peers, Russia and China primarily, are the ones who should make the big decisions. So I don't know how South Korea can avoid it. I just saw on your telecast that President Lee's visit is really only going to be 24th through the 26th, and the only full day being the 25th. And frankly, the way things are going in Washington, all the nutty things going on, I say you do better, spending as little time as possible and get out of there. And if you can make a trip to Japan, that's great. That'll do more for your country. But right now, let the U.S. just do what it's going to do, and you make the best of it. I just think that and I think meeting the Vietnamese leader is probably one of the most important things that South Korea could do. It sends a lot of messages to the rest of East Asia.
Right, so we'll have to look for more signals in the upcoming summit between President Trump and President Lee. That's moving forward. Now, we are also being concerned about Russia's visits to North Korea. It has been increasing to 2,772 in quarter two of 2025, the highest since the year 2011. Dr. Gov't, does this secretly point to actual deployments, and what's the impact?
So I think the Russians are trying to hide the fact that there's an increased number of North Koreans staying in Russia, entering Russia these days. And the reason is because we already know there's a sizable North Korean contingent fighting alongside the Russians in Russia. But then right now, Russia is engaged in the summer offensive against Ukraine, and they're putting a lot of effort into this offensive because they probably believe this is probably the last meaningful offensive, military offensive that Russia can engage against Ukraine before there's some sort of a settlement or ceasefire agreement is reached this year. Clearly, there's a first attempt of that would be the upcoming meeting summit between President Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska. So I don't think a ceasefire agreement will be reached at that summit, but then there'll be subsequent meetings, and it's likely that this war is entering the final phase. Well, paraphrasing Churchill, maybe it is not the beginning of the end, of the beginning of the end, but might be the end of the beginning. Or maybe I'm not saying this right in this context. But so anyways, we are entering like a terminal phase, hopefully. But then I think if the Russians are trying to maximize this opportunity, they need all the help they can get. And North Korea has been very helpful in this regard. And then, but the thing is that North Koreans are also running out of manpower that are deployed currently in Russia. So they are probably sending more troops, and this is very problematic because the new front that North Koreans are going to be deployed in will be away from the Russian territory. So this year, North Koreans were fully engaged in combat in the Russian territory, in recovering the Russian territory of Kursk. But then this time around, the offensive is being waged against the Ukrainian territory proper. And if the North Koreans indeed participate in combat against Ukraine, this is going to represent a major escalation, and that could even affect the ceasefire discussion that's going on. And so I think it's going to complicate things. Any signal that the North Koreans are going to participate in combat in Ukrainian territory is going to be interpreted as escalation, not just by the United States, but also by the European countries. So I think this is something that the Russians are trying to avoid, and I think this is the reason why they're hiding key figures regarding the number of North Koreans in Russia today.
Mm-hmm. So it's a very important phase in the situation. Now, before we let you go, Dr. Barry, finally, Pyongyang has reportedly agreed to send 6,000 more military personnel to Russia by year's end. When combining all of these, what do you think is the single biggest factor that for South Korea in the coming months?
Well, first of all, the military personnel, they're there. They're going to be there, as I understand it, for demining, for all sorts of reconstruction efforts. There's a long article of interview with some defectors on the BBC News website today of North Koreans who were working on construction projects in Russia and how they were treated by their North Korean supervisors. So all of this clues us into the fact that this is a relationship that is of utmost importance to Kim Jong-un, and he's not fully free to act on his own compared to 2019. So although Putin would not go so far as to tell him how to conduct or order him to conduct diplomacy in a certain way, he will certainly suggest. And I think to answer your question about the next 6 months, if even for 5 minutes Putin and Trump discussed a certain understanding about how to deal with North Korea, and Putin were to make a suggestion, Donald, if you did this and this and this, I think Chairman Kim would probably follow through, and I would certainly encourage him to do X, Y, and Z. I think that can be very, very telling, and that's why I say, if indeed the Alaska meeting takes place, and if it's very odd because you'd figure by Tuesday we would know the location. I'm speculating Anchorage, and we would know a lot more of the details, but we don't. And this is typically what happens with President Trump. And I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's the kind of thing where he can also decide, well, just as he did with the Singapore summit with Kim Jong-un, he postponed it when he felt a little bit of offensiveness coming from the North Korean government towards Vice President Mike Pence. So we don't know. But if it takes place on Friday, And if they discuss, even for 5-10 minutes, North Korea, which Trump certainly sees as just simply being part of the larger problem of Ukraine, and Trump is trying to appear that he's rolled up his sleeves and is trying to work with the man who counts, Vladimir Putin, to solve it, the byproduct of that could be to free up Kim Jong-un to do certain things that would be in his interest, but on the foundation of saying, we are clearly, as you, Mr. President, have acknowledged, are a nuclear power. We have a lot of nuclear weapons. But we're interested in discussions. But if you don't want to have a conversation, if you don't want to negotiate about anything, we'll be just fine. We're very content and happy with our relationship with our current allies, Russia and China.
Right, so definitely we will have to keep close tabs on the upcoming summit between the two leaders. We will definitely do that. But as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Dr. Gov't.
My pleasure.
And of course, Dr. Barry, we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
그날은 역사 속 사건이 아니다. 두려움 앞에 멈추지 않는 태도이며 포기하지 않는